once drill became very popular, the image of Chicago changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what's your thought process as far as how Chicago's viewed? Because most of the time when you say Chicago, people be like, it's dangerous, stay away, why are you going there? It's just a very negative connotation from at least Black people when they think about Chicago.
Yeah.
And then drill music has definitely played a part in that, for sure. And so like, and drill has went over the world, London, New York, everybody's doing drill now. So what's your thoughts on Chicago's reputation as far as violence linked with drill music?
Well, I think drill music wouldn't have been able to come about if Chicago didn't have that type of angst and type of like, if parts of Chicago didn't have the violence that we have. That was the expression of what Durk, what Reese, what Chief Keef. Man, they was, them dudes is from a really tough neighborhood one of the toughest neighborhoods in the world. And they were just talking what they've been exposed to and what they know. And it's really powerful how, like, we as Black people, and I say Black and brown people really, but how we take some of the heaviest things, the most difficult situations, and make something golden out of it. Because drill it created a sound, and it's like influenced the world, and it's dope. But as you said, that it's other sides to Chicago that I feel like people don't know. And I mean, if you think about it, sometimes people got a tendency to come from the glass half empty mentality anyway. Like, oh, you hear that story, so it's just like you generalize that's what it is, that's all it is. And I can understand why you would think like, man, if that's what it is, I ain't going to visit that place. But once you touch down or just even open your mind, because there's other artists that express what Chicago is too, from early on.
Lupe.
From Kanye,
yeah. Lupe was a version.
Chance.
Chance,
No Name.
That's
like,
a fact.
Like,
that's a fact.
They talk about it.
Shout out to Chance.
But like just different artists that talk about Chance showed a whole nother side of Chicago.
That's a fact.
That
Vic Mensa.
What'd you say?
Vic Mensa.
Vic. Oh, Vic. Yeah, Vic. Like, yeah, Vic.
But why is Chicago? Because there's a lot of cities that poverty is pretty much in every city, unfortunately, right? What makes Chicago so different as far as the violence? Like, why is the violence so heavy in Chicago as opposed to New York or like, you know what I mean? Like, it just seems like Chicago is just really intense.
Yeah.
In that violent aspect.
Well, I think like gang culture, and I know gangs exist everywhere, but for us, like gang culture was part of our parents growing up. Like the gangs was existing in the 60s, right? So that warrior spirit has been like in our DNA. And I'm not saying that there's gangsters everywhere, but that being said, it was organized for a while. And then as you know, certain people got incarcerated and it was not a lot of leaders there to like guide those who were dealing with the gang culture.
And they displaced people when they tore the buildings down.
And they tore the buildings down, displaced people. But it essentially, you know, that warrior gang thing is ingrained in us. And that's part of like one of the elements that I would say is different from most. Because where it's poverty, where it's lack of jobs, where it's lack of like education and kind of overall lack of hope, you're going to get that. Like you can go to Brooklyn, you can go in certain places in Harlem or Atlanta or like where you can go to these neighborhoods in Oakland and you feel what you feel in Chicago. But I think it's intensified just by the gang culture that has been there for a long time. And man, I always be thinking like one of my whole life missions has been to be a part of the peace in Chicago, like to really figure out like, man, because I don't have all the answers, but I do know creating jobs education, like education from a level, not just only in school, but providing people with ways to get to their dreams and stuff is important. And just like hope, man, like hope is a broad thing, but it's like I grew up, like my neighborhood ain't far from where Durk and them grew up. My neighborhood, or where G Herbo and Bibby grew up. I grew up around some of the same stuff, but it was the hope that my mother instilled, that I saw for myself, that made me say, okay, I don't want to go too far over there. I might be around this. I might be banging with these cats over here for a second, but man, I ain't really trying to shoot nobody. That's too much for me. Like, and that ain't what I'm on. So my point is, and that was because I felt like I had some value. And I think, I like to think about the solutions to help our city and cities across the country, to be honest.